Howdy, everybody. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. All right, so this is going to be the shortest talk I've given since high school, so I'm kind of excited. So I'm going to be talking about the easy path of pen testing. More or less, this is the things that if you know, you can fake being a pen tester. At least you know enough to get the job and build your skills from there, I hope. So I'm Tim Jensen. I work for AppSec Consulting out of San Jose, California. Lifetime hacker, blah, blah, blah. This is a short talk, so I'm not going to go over everything, but it's there, so if you want to look at it later. So what we're going to be talking about is some vulnerabilities, some tools, and some tactics that have repeatable success, specifically with mostly with protocols that are never going to get fixed, so you can keep using these skills for life, which is always great. And then I'm going to be telling you how to defend against them as well, so if you have a network and don't want to get breached by these, hopefully I can help you. So, setting some expectations, which I worked at Microsoft at one point. That's exactly the words that we had to use. So, what is a security vulnerability, right? So, a security vulnerability is a weakness in a product that could allow an attacker to compromise the integrity, availability, or confidentiality of a product. Everybody kind of assumes that, right? Well, why Microsoft doesn't fix a lot of things is because they do not consider it a vulnerability if the protocol was designed insecurely to begin with. So, I have had strong discussions with people on this, and I have lost. But if you're ever wondering why they're not going to fix these, this is why, because they will point you to the website and say you're an idiot. So last year, a bunch of people, including myself, talked about Responder. You're probably sick of it, but why I keep bringing it up, Responder is still not fixed on most people's networks. I've had 2 people this year in all the pen tests I've done that have been not vulnerable to Responder. So it's kind of bad. So Responder is a tool that works on the SMB protocol and responds back to, well, actually not just the SMB protocol, but it responds back to a lot of different protocols that are vulnerable. And basically somebody will say, hey, are you this? And it says, sure I am, send me creds and we can talk. That's it. So it's a great tool, it's easy to use, and it works on several different protocols. So SMB, NetBIOS, WPAD, which if you've never heard of WPAD, I'm sorry, because it's turned on all your machines. LLMNR, and MSSQL are things that Responder really does well. It does a lot of other things as well, but these are the ones that most common. So when you run Responder, anybody that's doing pretty much anything on the network, like if you're going to a file share, or even opening a website. A lot of times your computer is connecting over SMB for random reasons, and Responder just says, hey, send me your creds, and you do. So there is a username and a password hash that I've blotted out because that's my password hash. So, pretty easy. But we get a lot of customers that are like, yeah, but it's a password hash, and I've got a 28-character password, right? So that's a problem. I can't crack that 28-character password. Well, unfortunately, that doesn't matter, and I'll get into that in a second. But so basic mitigations for Responder SMB. 2-factor authentication doesn't work because SMB doesn't support 2-factor authentication. So even if you have it turned on Windows, SMB is bypassed, and you can get a Meterpreter shell very easily. Strong passwords don't matter, and I'll talk about that again in a second. And password rotations with software like CyberArk, if you know what that is. CyberArk will change your passwords for you, and you don't even have to know it. It's a password manager. So you use an admin password on a server. 5 minutes later, it's going to rotate that password. And because it's not instantaneous rotation, these tools are so fast that it doesn't matter. Once we get a hash, we can pass it. So mitigations that do work, and you have to do all of them. So if you're trying to fix Responder, there's your list. So you don't have to pay somebody a lot of money. Disable NetBIOS, disable LLMNR, and set SMB signing to required. That's one that catches people. So there's enabled, disabled, and required. If you set it to enabled, or sorry, always, actually no, never mind, I was wrong, enabled. So if you set it to enabled, it sounds like you're protected, but it's actually just the optional of if everybody supports it, then I'm going to use it. So if you set it to required, we can say if it's set to enabled, we can say, hey, I don't support it. And then it's vulnerable again. So as long as the attacker is in the middle, which Responder does, you have to set it to required. So why long passwords don't matter, why password rotation doesn't matter, is a great tool called MultiRelay that's with Responder. So MultiRelay, you set it up, and basically when Responder responds to a host, gets the password hash, you've already told it, I want to connect to this server, let's say a file share, and all that it does is it passes the hash over to the file server. So you never have to crack the hash, and Responder gives you this nice little, once it's compromised, so it waits for an admin user, because every other user is garbage. So it waits for the admins to come along and gives you this nice little shell. And one thing you can do is like Mimikatz. So once you've got an admin on the file server, it's probably an enterprise domain admin, let's face it. So at that point, you can just dump their cred, plain text, and log into the domain controller, add your own domain admin, and you've taken over the whole network. So start to finish with Responder and MultiRelay, we're talking less than 5 minutes to be DA on the network. So it's kind of great. And then there's other things you can do with this. So you can do any command on the server as system, obviously. You can create your own local admins for backups in case something happens. That way you've got local access to that box. You can pivot. So a lot of times I'm doing PCI pen tests. So there's the pay card network for credit cards, and then the regular network that's toxic. And if you find a host that has an IP on both, you can use this to break into that host, do one command to pivot all of your traffic, and now you're attacking inside this nice secure zone. So we find that a lot. And yes, I am trying to rush this talk, I'm sorry. If you have questions, talk to me later. So one big thing that I also hear from customers all the time, antivirus will save us. So Symantec is the #1, I hear what? So Symantec is the #1 antivirus for corporations. So most deployments, you can run that command right there and it shuts off the antivirus. You just have to run it on command line. So they'll protect the GUI, so if you right click and try to disable antivirus, it doesn't work. But nobody's setting the command line stop arguments. So it's very easy. Again, with MultiRelay there, it gave you a command line console. You can just do cd, go to this, smc.exe space-stop, and the AV shuts down. And now if that was blocking your Mimikatz or whatever from running to grab passwords out, guess what? Now you can go back out of that, run Mimikatz, and dump all the passwords. So it's very convenient. So again, if you're running Symantec, make sure those settings are set. I have seen absolutely 0 people having set those, including, well, I'm not going to talk about that. So antivirus failure #2. So I talked about creating a local admin account to get on a server. So let's say that they have really, really good security. I've seen some people running like 3 antiviruses, file integrity monitoring, all this kind of stuff, right? Really hardened, I can't get anything to work. Well, if I've created that local admin account, what I can do is remote desktop to the server as that local admin, right? Well, when you've got the box up, you can attach your C drive from your attacker workstation. So I've got a little Windows attacker VM. So I can attach my own C drive with all of my hacker tools on it. When I RDP in, no antivirus can scan an RDP attached share. It just can't happen. And I have a great story that I probably don't have time to tell about how I found that out, and it is embarrassing, so feel free to ask me later. But yeah, so I found that out. This is 100% successful. It will bypass everything. So just load up Mimikatz, load up whatever tools you want, any exploit code, Meterpreter, payloads, and exe, whatever, and run it on there, double click, and it's going to work. So AV bypassed. So the part that I'm not repeating from last year. So newer tools that I've been finding that are older tools that not many people are using, CrackMapExec, or CrackMap for short, because I always get the exec part wrong, is a great tool. So it's got several different components, and basically what it's doing is it's tying together Metasploit with Responder. That's really kind of what it does well. But basically, here's just some of the features that it does. So one thing, I can run any code on it as long as I have a username and password, and it executes it over SMB. It runs it all in memory, so you're not going to get caught by AV most of the time. There is a few times that it does. But most of the time, you can run whatever. So I put like the ARP-A there, which is really nice. So if you get like a domain admin cred and you're on a short engagement, like I've had a few times this year, and I'm trying to break into the card data environment, for PCI, if I'm looking for a dual-homed host that has both of those IPs, I can run ARP-A across every single host in their network. And then I'm just grepping out real quick, hey, can I see any 172.16 addresses, right? If it's that, then it's in this protected environment. If I can find that, then I found that host that I should be targeting and attacking. So really slick to just run something across everything. Or if you want to make that backup account for everybody, I mean, you could throw that in there too, and net use add and add or delete users. Gathering creds across the network is where I really love it. So you can run Mimikatz across every box very quickly. So what I start with usually is a lower privilege user. So all you need is one user account, and you can run it across all of a /24 or /16 or whatever. It's ridiculously fast, like 30 seconds to run through a /24. And it runs through and it dumps all the creds on the boxes. Then you go through all those creds, you take one of those creds, you pop it in, you run it again. You take those creds, you keep doing this until you get a domain admin account. Once you have a domain admin account, then you've just logged into every single box and dumped creds, and now you know that, hey, I've got a domain admin. I go log into the domain controller, right, and create my own domain admin, and I've taken over the network. So again, very fast and convenient. And then the incredibly dangerous but really fun thing to do that I have not done on a customer network for obvious reasons, you can point at like a /24 and get a Meterpreter shell on every single host. So, and again, it's pretty much instantaneous, so 256 shells coming back is pretty great. Someday I want to be able to do that on a /16 and just watch my box get completely destroyed from reverse shells coming back. But it's really great, and it's really fast and easy, and the usages are just great. So it's a tool that I highly recommend, but it scares the hell out of people when you got domain admin and now you've taken over like everything very quickly, because now you can run commands on every single host simultaneously. It's kind of shocking to customers. I'm talking faster than I thought. I'm good. All right, so another thing that Responder does that's a little newer, so July 2017, is MSSQL servers. So here we get into another protocol that Microsoft really screwed up. So when you go to when your computer, I should say, is trying to find an instance of MSSQL, it does //mydb, right? And sometimes you can give it an IP, sometimes you don't, but regardless, when you do that, it's sending out a broadcast message to your entire network saying, who has mydb? Well, just like everything else in Responder, Responder replies back and says, I have it, send me a password, and you do. So if any of your software is using MSSQL, whenever your clients are connecting to it, they're all able to broadcast their passwords. Some of them are plain text, some of them are hashes, but regardless, it's pwning everything. And usually, almost every time I'm getting a SA or administrator password back, which again, if it's the administrator password, half the time is a domain admin for some odd reason I haven't figured out yet. But like the only remediation to this is stop using MSSQL. Like, I got nothing. Like, this is such a vulnerability, it's just handing your data away on your internal network. So hopefully not a surprise, MS1701 Zero came out last year. So an SMB vulnerability, Microsoft put out a patch right away. This was a leaked, and I always get this wrong, CIA or NSA, one or the other, accidentally got it leaked. But basically, you send a packet at this computer, you get a shell, right? Doesn't really matter about antivirus, doesn't matter about anything. It just pops in, magically works, and dumps you into the system. Very rarely crashes even, which is nice. So the problem with that is it's only on 64-bit clients, the Meterpreter shell, or the Metasploit version. The official CIA, NSA, whatever it was tool works on all of them. But, do you really want to connect to that and hope that they're not sending all the data back to the NSA or something? I don't know about you guys, but my customers would kind of kill me. So what I just found out somewhat recently was there is another MS1701 Zero in Metasploit, and I kind of ignored it because the other one worked, right? But what I found out is this other one is using PSExec, and it works on x86 clients, and most importantly what I found out is it works on Windows 2000. So if you have any Windows 2000 boxes on your network, and I've gotten this so much it's not even funny, you get told, well, we know that there's a lot of exploits out there for it, or vulnerabilities for it, but there are no exploits you can actually attack with. So we're not going to fix the Windows 2000 box until you can actually break into it easily. Well, this makes it point and click. I can teach a 5-year-old to do this in 5 minutes, right? There should be a YouTube video. There probably already is. But very easily you can break into a Windows 2000 box. There is no patch for this. So if you're running any Windows 2000, that's bad. But if you're running into any MS1701 Zeros out there that are x86, this is the way to get into them and break in. So it's kind of nice. I will say, a note that I have here, so normally the share that it uses automatically is $admin. For Windows 2000, you have to change that to admin $. You have to change it to C $, because Windows 2000 didn't have an admin share. So you change it to that and it works. And sometimes you need to give this one creds. Most of the time you don't. So it's kind of slick. And the creds don't have to be admin, just literally any domain cred will get you into their box. So just to be complete on that, I also wanted to point out MS08067. If this one's a shock to anybody, you're probably really young. So this was back from 2008. It's the exact same thing as MS1701 Zero. The only reason I'm bringing it up is that Nessus hasn't been catching it reliably, and I'm still finding at least 50 of them a year. So if you're ever seeing hosts that are old, like 2000, 2003, XP, 2008, I just recommend manually trying to exploit them. I will say that Nessus version 8 just caught one for the first time. Version 8 just came out, I think, last week. Version 8 caught the first one in like 2 years for me, so I'm kind of happy about that. So they might have fixed it, or it might have just been a fluke, but we'll see. But yeah, so if you ever want to run into that, I gave some steps on basically how to parse out all those hosts and run it to exploit them. So Cisco Smart Install. This is a fun one. So Cisco Smart Install really broke in like March of this year, but the history of it is really funny. So last year around this time, or a little earlier, Rapid7 and a couple other companies started talking about Cisco Smart Install. And they were really late to the game because some random Russian guy that doesn't exist, if you look up the history, talked at a con and released this tool like almost 3 years ago now. So it's been out there for a long time, which should be scary. So if you're a network admin, you should really be looking at port 786. And if you're seeing that on your network, shut it off. So basically what you can do with this, it's called See It is the tool. So basically, Cisco Smart Install protocol is supposed to make it really easy for Cisco devices to talk and configure themselves without admins needing to. But what you can do with this protocol is just do a -G in this guy's tool, and it downloads the Cisco config to your device, and it uses TFTP to do it. And it's turned on by default on every Cisco device since 2006. So do a -G, it pulls down the config. You can change whatever you want in it and re-upload it. It'll reboot their device, so that'll get you caught. But yeah, you can re-upload it, and now you've taken over their network equipment. Internally, we see it a lot. Externally, we're seeing it more than we should. The upside is, externally, normally people are blocking it so you can't pull the config, because then they have to have TFTP open, outbound, which thankfully a lot of people are blocking, surprisingly. But it's happening more often than not. There is an execute function as well. It's a little harder to use, so you can do any remote code execution on the device. But if you screw it up, it wipes the device, so that's not so good. So most people don't know how to use that, aside from probably the crazy Russian guy that made it, who again doesn't exist, so I'm assuming KGB at this point. But yeah, so it's not good if the port's available anywhere. Shut it down. Cisco finally recommended this in like May of this year, because there are so many remote code execution vulnerabilities on this protocol now that they finally had to come back and say it's not remote code execution vulnerabilities if the product itself is designed to do remote code execution without authentication. So great. So here's my unfortunate part. I was going to give you a slide of showing in Shodan how many things in Manitoba are available with Smart Install, but I found out that was a really bad idea. Long story short. So please do not hack all of the people in Manitoba that are vulnerable to this right now. Just saying, please don't. But, you know, crimes do get prosecuted. So, and I'll probably get in trouble too. So yeah, please don't, you know, commit crimes, but I do recommend looking in your own networks. So, the really depressing one to talk about, default passwords are still common. And I am really not going to spend much time on this slide, but basically how to find default passwords on a network, because people generally don't look at them very often. Even in the pen testing world, we don't do as much as we probably should sometimes. So here's a great way to find a bunch of them, and it's basically nmap the network, import the results into Metasploit, because I'm like the only person that loves the Metasploit management for host and port tracking. And then you can use HTTP screenshot to screenshot every port. And I have a script that I believe is up on my GitHub, otherwise I can put it up there. But basically it pulls all of your results out of Metasploit for every web port. It runs it through HTTP screenshot, so you get a picture of every one of them. And I have it now too where it will do a dirbuster on it so that it pulls every subdirectory on the host and you can see everything that's on the server, which is kind of nice. But then it just takes all those, puts into a webpage.html, and you can load it up on your browser and look at every single screenshot of every web page on the internal network. And then once you see different things like an APC console, you can try default passwords really quickly then of APC to get in. And it's pretty slick. Unless you're on a ridiculously large network, I mean, it takes a couple hours to go through and try default creds on every single web page. And I'm getting like 20 to 30% crack with that, which is kind of depressing. But yeah, getting into 30% of your network with default passwords is fun. So LDAP. So LDAP in Active Directory is mostly secure. I will say portions of the GPO, if you actually monitor it, are being sent plain text from the servers, including the brand new latest Windows. I have caught credentials plain text once. I still don't know why, but I think it's kind of random. But just so you know, if you're ever monitoring that, you can find some good stuff, so make sure that you're not leaking weird things out of plain text GPO. Active Directory accepts plain text LDAP passwords, always has, always probably will. Already? Jeez. All right, so going even faster. So it accepts plain text passwords, so what I recommend is mirroring that port, have your network team mirror the ports for AD at least every a couple of months, 6 months, a year, whatever. But monitor it and dump so that you're seeing if any admin has pointed, like Linux admins are great for this, pointing it at plain text LDAP and sending all the creds plain text across the network, not good. So just kind of make sure that they're not doing that. Don't install Wireshark on the Active Directory server because that, reduces security. So I see that a lot. But anyway, yeah, watch your LDAP. Most pen testers aren't going to test for that just because ARP spoofing, the domain controller usually ends poorly on a network. So try to check that yourself, because that doesn't mean an attacker won't, because they don't care about causing downtime. So Active Directory sysvol shares are also pretty common. So you can go in and dump, there's a Metasploit module with it, looking for the C password, and you can dump out passwords right out of Active Directory. They have mostly closed this, but I still find it on a lot of systems that you can pull these C passwords out. There is a decoder built into Kali to reverse those keys, and you can dump the plain text passwords out very quickly. And you can find a lot of instructions online to do that. NFS, I'm seeing more and more. NFS port 2049 is a network file share. Most people are using version 3. Yeah, Mike, shut up. Most people are using version 3, not version 4. So version 4 supports encryption and authentication. Version 3 does not. So anybody using version 3, which is 99.99%, are vulnerable. So if you can attach the share, you can guaranteed read-write every file on there. A lot of people don't know this or have forgotten it, including I had forgotten it for years and then remembered it recently. So I have instructions here of how to, or actually I guess partial instructions here and partial on the next slide, of how to read-write every file on a network file share. It's pretty easy. Basically, whatever user owns the file. So if it's owned by user 1291, you just create a user on your own box that you've mounted from and change them to 1291, and then SU to that user in your side and go to the file on the file share, and you've now owned the file and you can read, write, modify it. I'm seeing this 90% of the time that NFS is being used. It's backup servers, so I can read, write, and modify your backups, which is probably not a good thing, but it's really kind of funny. So getting into things like, people's home directories and .ssh, and then pulling your authorized keys down and then using those keys to, go and log in, and or I guess actually downloading the private key and going to log in. But yeah, you get the idea. And I'm assuming that is time. So, all right, 1 minute left. Any questions? Yes?
Any good stories?
Lots of good stories, but probably not in 1 minute. If you want to meet me back there or chat with me tomorrow, I can give you lots of good stories. So, yes?
You mentioned semantic. What about Windows Defender? The ubiquitous AB disabled favor of semantic?
I have actually had Defender catch me once. So it was surprising. Actually, the new server Defender on the newest Windows is decent, and the next iteration of Windows, it's actually going to be considerably harder, which is going to be interesting. At least we say it's going to be considerably harder. It's going to be interesting to see what that actually turns out to be. But I've heard some very smart people say that it's going to be considerably better. So we'll see. But yep. Any other questions? Comments, concerns? All right, I'll be over there until they throw me out.